My friends, today I want to remind you of something simple yet incredibly powerful. You are what you consume, not just what you eat, but what you read, what you watch, what you listen to, and the people you allow into your inner world. Have you ever noticed that when you spend time with a negative person, suddenly the whole world looks a little darker? And when you spend time with someone hopeful, suddenly everything seems possible. That's the power of consumption. Life is constantly feeding us ideas, emotions, values, habits. And whether we notice or not, we are constantly absorbing. Whatever we repeatedly consume becomes the raw material of our actions, our thoughts, and eventually our future. Imagine your mind as a garden. If you plant seeds of anger, jealousy, gossip, and fear, don't expect flowers, expect weeds. But if you plant seeds of learning, inspiration, kindness, and clarity, beauty becomes inevitable. The tragedy is not that we don't have opportunities to grow. The real tragedy is that we keep feeding ourselves things that shrink us. We complain we don't feel peaceful, yet we consume noise all day. We complain we don't feel confident, yet we consume comparisons all day. We complain we don't feel focused, yet we consume distractions all day. My friends, your life cannot rise above the quality of what you feed your mind, your heart, and your soul. So ask yourself, are you feeding your strength or your weakness, your purpose or your confusion, your growth or your excuses? Because the truth is simple. You cannot live a high quality life on low quality input. Choose what you consume wisely. Choose who you allow into your world wisely. Choose what you allow to influence you wisely. The world will keep giving you options, but your growth depends on your selection. If you want a peaceful life, consume peace. If you want a purposeful life, consume clarity. If you want a joyful life, consume positivity. The truth that your life reflects whatever you repeatedly consume mentally, emotionally, and socially may sound simple, but it is one of the deepest realities governing our daily experience. Most of us think our life is shaped by big events, dramatic changes, or sudden opportunities. But the truth is, life is shaped far more by the small things we silently absorb every day. Every thought you entertain, every conversation you participate in, every piece of content you watch, every environment you expose yourself to, all of it becomes a part of you. Slowly, silently, gradually, it starts to influence your choices, your reactions, your emotions, and even your identity. You don't become who you are overnight. You become who you are through tiny doses of daily consumption that eventually accumulate and settle inside your mind. If you spend your mornings listening to people complain, don't be surprised if complaining becomes your language. If you spend your evenings watching content that glorifies negativity, drama, or superficial lifestyles, don't be surprised if real life begins to feel dull, stressful, or incomplete. And if you surround yourself with people who constantly highlight what is wrong in life rather than what is possible, your perspective will naturally start to shrink. It is impossible to absorb negativity daily and expect a positive mindset. It is impossible to consume fear and expect courage. It is impossible to consume noise and expect inner peace. You reflect what you repeatedly take in. On the other hand, when you choose to consume uplifting ideas, whether through inspiring books, meaningful videos, deep conversations, or positive company, you start to change from within. Your thoughts become calmer, your mind becomes clearer, your decisions become more powerful. You naturally start to think bigger, dream bigger, and feel lighter. It is not magic. It is simply the effect of consistent positive input. Whatever you feed your internal world begins to shape your external world. People often try to change their life without changing what they consume. But that's like trying to grow a healthy plant while watering it with polluted water. The plant doesn't have a choice. It absorbs whatever you give it. Your mind is the same. Think about how many things you take in every day without even noticing. Songs, conversations, social media posts, moods of people around you, arguments, opinions, random thoughts, jokes, news, comments, expectations, fears, comparisons. Each one enters your mind and settles somewhere. Slowly, it begins to affect your emotional environment. What you consume becomes the atmosphere you live in. And the atmosphere you live in becomes the quality of your life. If you want peace, you must consume peaceful things. If you want clarity, you must consume clarity. If you want confidence, you must consume content that strengthens you rather than weakens you. It is not about being strict. It is about being conscious. Your mind is always open, always absorbing. That the question is not whether you're consuming. The question is, what are you consuming? Your inner world is like a mirror. It reflects whatever you show it repeatedly. Show it chaos, and you will feel chaotic. Show it growth, and you will grow. Show it wisdom, and you will become wiser. Show it fear, and you will become fearful. Every day you are shaping your destiny through what you allow in. Life is not just happening to you. Life is responding to what you consume. And when you understand that, you begin to choose more wisely. Because you finally realize that you are not just living life. You are creating it from within. The mind being like a garden is one of the most powerful ways to understand personal growth. Because a garden never lies. It simply reflects whatever has been planted and whatever has been allowed to grow, intentionally or unintentionally. When you look at a garden full of weeds, you don't blame the soil. You understand that neglect allowed the weeds to take over. And when you see a garden full of flowers, you appreciate the effort, the care, the patience, and the decisions behind it. In the same way, your mind reflects everything you allow into it. Good seeds create growth, beauty, and clarity. Bad seeds create confusion, restlessness, and chaos. Just like a garden, your mind is fertile. It can grow anything, courage or fear, hope or doubt, peace or anxiety, gratitude or dissatisfaction. The mind does not discriminate. It simply nurtures whatever you plant and nourishes whatever you allow to remain. A single discouraging thought, if allowed to repeat, can grow into self-doubt. A single unresolved frustration can grow into bitterness. A single moment of comparison can grow into lifelong insecurity. And a single negative influence, if entertained again and again, can shape your thinking without you even realizing it. Weeds never ask for permission. They simply grow when the gardener is not paying attention. On the other hand, nurturing a garden of positivity is an intentional process. You must plant seeds of wisdom, learning, gratitude, and peace regularly. Just as a gardener waters the plants, trims the unnecessary branches, removes the weeds, and makes sure sunlight reaches every part, you too must consciously take care of your mind. That means removing toxic influences before they take root. That means letting go of grudges before they grow into resentment. That means stopping negative self. Talk before it becomes your inner voice. Growth is a result of discipline, not accident. Think for a moment about the seeds you have been planting. What kind of content do you consume daily? What kind of conversations do you participate in? What kind of thoughts do you repeat in your mind? What kind of energy do you allow from people around you? Each of these is a seed, small, unnoticed, but powerful. And these seeds slowly shape the landscape of your inner world. If your mind feels heavy, crowded, or chaotic, perhaps it is time to check what has been growing inside you. A peaceful mind is not a coincidence. It is the result of choosing the right seeds consistently. A beautiful garden doesn't grow in one day, and neither does a beautiful mind. It requires patience. It requires awareness. It requires daily nourishment. You cannot plant seeds of negativity and expect a life filled with joy. You cannot plant seeds of laziness and expect success. You cannot plant seeds of comparison and expect contentment. You cannot plant seeds of fear and expect confidence. The law is simple. Your mind produces what you plant. But the most empowering part is this: you are the gardener. You have the authority to choose what grows and what does not. You can pull out the weeds of past hurt. You can plant new seeds of hope. You can prune the branches of unhealthy habits. You can water the qualities you want to strengthen. And over time, your mind becomes a garden that reflects the best of who you can be. Every thought, every input, every choice adds up, and slowly your inner garden becomes a place of growth, not chaos, a place of beauty, not confusion. Negative people and negative content have an influence far deeper than we usually acknowledge. Most of us assume that we can simply listen to negativity, watch negativity, or be around negativity without being affected by it. We tell ourselves, I'm strong, I can handle it, but influence doesn't always enter with noise. Sometimes it enters quietly, through repetition, through exposure, through the subtle way the mind absorbs energy without our permission. Spending time with negative people is like sitting in a room full of smoke. You don't have to be the one smoking to be affected. You just have to stay there long enough. Eventually the smell sits on your clothes, your hair, your skin, And even though you never lit a cigarette, you walk out carrying its trace. The same happens with negativity. When you repeatedly expose yourself to people who constantly complain, criticize, gossip, or speak with bitterness, their energy begins to shape your internal environment. You may not agree with them, but their words sit in your mind, their moods influence your own, their perspectives begin to create shadows in your thinking. Negativity is contagious. It spreads silently, starting small, but growing quickly. One negative conversation can follow you the entire day. One discouraging sentence can weaken your confidence. One toxic remark can make you question your own worth. And the more you absorb, the more it becomes normal. The danger is not just that negativity affects you. It's that you slowly start accepting it as the standard. Negative content functions the same way. Whether it is dramas filled with conflict, news filled with fear, posts designed to trigger comparison, or entertainment built on chaos, all of it leaves an imprint. Your mind doesn't see content as just content. It takes it in as experience. It reacts emotionally. It forms associations. It shapes beliefs. If you keep watching stories full of betrayal, you start trusting people less. If you keep watching content full of superficial lifestyles, you start feeling like your own life is not enough. If you keep feeding your mind with fear-based information, your mind becomes anxious even when your reality is stable. The human heart is sensitive. Even when the face looks strong, when you sit with people who only point out problems, if you begin to overlook possibilities. When you sit with people who only complain about life, you begin to feel that life is harder than it really is. When you sit with people who blame everyone else, you begin to forget your own responsibility. And when you sit with people who insist that nothing good will happen, you slowly stop expecting good things. Negativity shrinks your world. It reduces your capacity to dream, to hope, to try. It is not about judging negative people. It is about protecting your inner world. Not everyone intentionally spreads negativity. Some are simply carrying unresolved pain. But if you absorb every emotion around you without filtering, you end up carrying weight that is not yours. You must realize that your emotional health matters too. You must understand that peace is not possible if your daily environment is filled with noise. And you must learn that your mind needs protection just as your body does. Staying close to negativity doesn't make you strong, it makes you drained. Surrounding yourself with uplifting, wise, calm, and hopeful people doesn't make you weak. It makes you aligned with the life you want to live. At the end of the day, the energy you allow around you becomes the energy you carry within you. Positive influences have a remarkable ability to elevate your thinking, expand your possibilities, and bring genuine inner peace. Most people underestimate the power of being surrounded by the right voices, the right energy, and the right kind of content. They think positivity is just about smiling more or ignoring problems, but in reality, positivity is nourishment. It feeds the mind the strength It needs to navigate life's challenges with clarity, resilience, and hope. When you intentionally bring uplifting influences into your life, you begin to notice that your mind becomes lighter, your decisions become clearer, and the world seems more manageable. It's not that life becomes easier, it's that you become stronger. Being around positive people is like standing in sunlight. You don't always realize how cold you were until warmth touches you. Positive people don't just encourage you, they remind you of who you are capable of becoming. They don't just give solutions, they give perspective. Even in difficult situations, their presence feels like a stabilizing force. They are the ones who remind you to look at the lesson instead of the loss, to look at the opportunity instead of the obstacle, and to look at the blessing instead of the burden. Their words don't just enter your ears, they enter your heart. And slowly, their way of thinking becomes a part of your inner dialogue. In the same way, consuming positive content, books that inspire growth, videos that teach wisdom, messages that uplift the spirit, begins to reshape your inner landscape. What you expose your mind to repeatedly eventually becomes your mindset. If you spend your time absorbing ideas from people who speak about purpose, gratitude, discipline, and self-respect, your thoughts naturally start to rise to that level. You begin to think more deeply, react more calmly, and dream more boldly. Positivity teaches the mind how to fly above situations instead of sinking into them. One of the most beautiful qualities of positive influences is that they awaken possibility. When you are surrounded by people who believe in progress, you start believing in progress yourself. When you hear stories of resilience, you start recognizing your own strength. When you interact with individuals who focus on solutions, your mind automatically shifts toward constructive thinking. Life stops feeling like a series of problems and starts feeling like a journey of growth. Positive influences stretch your imagination. They remind you that you are not limited by your past. They remind you that change is possible. They remind you that what you feed your mind becomes your reality. And then there is the peace that positive influences bring. Not the temporary peace that comes from escaping problems, but the deeper peace that comes from having clarity, direction, and the right mindset. Positive influences help you breathe better emotionally. They help you see with more patience. They help you respond instead of react. When you consume good energy, your heart becomes lighter, your thoughts become cleaner, and your life feels more balanced. Peace becomes a natural state, not a rare moment. Many people try to change their life through effort alone. But effort becomes much easier when the environment supports growth. Just as a healthy plant needs sunlight, good soil, and pure water, a healthy mind needs encouragement, inspiration, and wisdom. Surround yourself with people who lift you higher, not those who pull you down. Feed your mind with content that nourishes your soul, not content that drains your spirit. With the right influences, even the most ordinary days feel meaningful. The hardest challenges feel manageable, and the smallest victories feel beautiful. In the positive influences don't just change your thoughts, they transform your entire experience of life. Complaints about life often have very little to do with life itself and much more to do with the kind of consumption we allow every day. Noise, comparison, distractions, and emotional clutter that build up inside us without our awareness. People frequently say they are stressed, confused, anxious, or tired of life. But if you look closely, most of these feelings are not created by their reality. They are created by the input they keep feeding their mind. The mind is a sensitive instrument. It is deeply influenced by what it hears, sees, and absorbs. When it is surrounded by constant noise and emotional pollution, it becomes restless. And that restlessness then gets projected onto life, making everything feel heavier than it really is. Think about how your day begins. The moment you wake up, if the first thing you consume is your phone, scrolling through updates, seeing comparisons, reading negative information, or letting other people's opinions rush into your mind, your emotional environment gets shaken before the day even starts. This early morning chaos becomes the foundation for your mood, your reactions, and your decisions. You start moving through the day feeling overwhelmed, not because your life is overwhelming, but because your mind was overloaded with information before it even had a chance to breathe. Distractions have a similar effect. The more you consume short bursts of entertainment, quick dopamine hits, and mindless content, the harder it becomes for your mind to focus. You begin to feel impatient, restless, and dissatisfied. Simple tasks feel like burdens. Responsibilities feel like pressure. Even peaceful moments feel uncomfortable because your mind is used to constant stimulation. Then people complain, "I can't focus," or "I don't feel motivated," without realizing that the constant consumption of distractions is slowly training their mind to be scattered. Comparison is another powerful destroyer of peace. When you consistently consume content that highlights the brightest, most polished, most filtered parts of other people's lives, you begin to feel as though your own life is lacking something. It doesn't matter how well you are doing. Comparison creates a sense of insufficiency. You start questioning your pace, your achievements, your choices, and sometimes even your worth. This emotional discomfort often leads to frustration, self-doubt, and dissatisfaction. People then complain, "Nothing in my life feels enough," when the truth is that comparison is shaping their sense of inadequacy, not reality. Noise, whether emotional noise from people around you or digital noise from the world, also plays a huge role. When you constantly consume arguments, controversies, heated discussions, or dramatic content, your emotional system stays activated. You become reactive, sensitive, or easily irritated. Your mind remains in a state of tension. Even small situations feel big. Even minor inconveniences feel serious. And you begin to believe that life itself is stressful, when in reality, It is the noise you are consuming that is creating internal stress. If people could observe the amount of emotional junk they are consuming daily, many of their complaints would suddenly make sense. A mind fed with chaos will eventually feel chaotic. A heart constantly exposed to comparison will eventually feel insecure. A person drowning in distractions will eventually lose clarity and someone who is always surrounded by noise will naturally struggle to find peace. The mind is not designed to handle excessive negative input, yet every day, without thinking, we expose it to more than it can process. And then we blame life for the discomfort that actually comes from the kind of input we allow. Your complaints are often signals, not problems. Signals that your consumption needs cleansing, that your inner environment needs care, and that your mind needs healthier, calmer, more uplifting input. You cannot expect a powerful life if you constantly feed yourself weak inputs. This is one of the simplest yet most transformative truths of personal growth. Many people dream of living strong, confident, disciplined, purposeful lives, but they continue consuming content, conversations, habits, and environments that weaken their mindset every single day. It's like wanting a strong, healthy body while eating nothing but junk food. The desire may be strong, but the input does not support the outcome. The mind needs nourishment just as the body does, and whatever you feed it becomes its strength or its weakness. Weak inputs come in many forms. They can be the negative voices you listen to, telling you that you can't, you won't, or you shouldn't. They can be the unproductive thoughts you entertain, like overthinking, fear-based assumptions, or self-doubt. They can be the type of entertainment you engage in, content that numbs the brain rather than elevates it, conversations that drain you instead of inspiring you. They can even be the habits you cultivate unconsciously, like endlessly scrolling on social media, surrounding yourself with gossip, or engaging in activities that consume time but contribute nothing to growth. Every one of these weak inputs chips away at your strength, not all at once, but little by little, day after day. People often underestimate how deeply these small influences affect their mindset. They wonder why they lack clarity, why they feel mentally tired, why they struggle to stay motivated, or why confidence feels so fragile. But when your daily diet consists of weak input, the mind becomes fragile, it becomes reactive instead of responsive, it becomes doubtful instead of determined, it becomes distracted instead of focused. A weak input cannot produce a strong outcome. On the other hand, when you feed yourself strong inputs, wisdom, learning, uplifting conversations, disciplined habits, peaceful environments, constructive content, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. You start to develop inner strength. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your perspective becomes steadier. Your emotions become more grounded, and your actions begin to carry conviction. Just as strong physical food fuels the body for performance, strong mental input fuels the mind for purpose. A powerful life doesn't come from occasional bursts of motivation. It comes from consistent nourishment. Reading something meaningful every day strengthens your understanding. Listening to encouraging voices strengthens your hope. Practicing discipline strengthens your self-respect. Choosing calm over chaos strengthens your emotional balance. Protecting your time strengthens your focus. Each of these becomes a strong input, and each one slowly builds the foundation of a powerful life. It's important to recognize that strength is not something you suddenly wake up with. It is something you grow into through what you allow into your mind. If the people around you constantly weaken your dreams, you will struggle to stay strong. If the content you consume teaches distraction, drama, or superficiality, you will struggle to stay grounded. If your habits are built around comfort and avoidance, you will struggle to face challenges with courage. Strength requires conscious choices. Your life becomes powerful when your inputs are powerful. When you surround yourself with people who challenge you to rise, your thinking rises. When you listen to ideas that expand your understanding, your vision expands. When you engage in habits that improve your discipline, your character strengthens. When your daily environment feeds your growth, your life naturally moves toward growth. You don't have to force transformation, you simply have to feed it. The truth is simple. You cannot live a powerful life if you keep feeding your mind things that make you powerless. If you want strength, consume strength. If you want purpose, consume clarity. If you want discipline, consume inspiration. Every input matters because every input is shaping who you are becoming. Your emotional environment shapes your beliefs far more than you realize. Most people think beliefs come from logic, personal decisions, or conscious choices, but in reality, beliefs are often shaped silently by the emotional climate you live in. Your environment includes the people you talk to, the moods you absorb, the energy around you in the tone of conversations you participate in, and even the emotional patterns you witness repeatedly. Without noticing, these influences begin to settle inside you, forming ideas about who you are, what life is, and what is possible for you. When you spend time in an environment filled with encouragement, warmth, understanding, and support, your beliefs naturally begin to expand. You start believing that challenges can be overcome, that there is hope ahead, that you have value, that your dreams matter, and that you are capable of rising. A positive emotional environment gives you permission to grow. It gives you the courage to take risks, the strength to try again, and the confidence to trust yourself. When people around you speak with kindness, when they celebrate your progress, when they reassure you during difficult times, your mind slowly begins to form beliefs that support your growth. You begin to feel worthy, strong, and capable. But the opposite is equally true. An environment filled with negativity, criticism, fear, or discouragement quietly shapes limiting beliefs. Sometimes life doesn't shrink because of your potential. It shrinks because of the emotional climate you're living in. If you are constantly surrounded by people who doubt you, you eventually start doubting yourself. If you repeatedly hear conversations that focus on impossibilities, your mind slowly begins to believe that the world is limited. If the emotional tone around you is filled with fear or hopelessness, it becomes difficult to see possibilities, even when they stand in front of you. You begin to internalize those emotions, turning them into beliefs about your worth, your capacity, and your destiny. Many people walk through life carrying beliefs that never belonged to them. They inherited them from the people they lived with, the friends they surrounded themselves with, the content they consumed, and the emotional energy they absorbed. A child raised around constant criticism often grows into an adult who believes they are not enough. Someone who spends years around people who never take risks slowly forms the belief that playing safe is the only way. Someone who is constantly exposed to emotional chaos may eventually believe that peace is impossible. These beliefs don't come from truth. They come from the environment. The emotional environment also influences how you interpret yourself. If the people around you highlight your flaws more than your strengths, you begin to define yourself by your weaknesses. If they highlight your mistakes more than your progress, you develop a belief that you are always failing. But when the emotional environment is healthy, people help you see yourself with clarity. They remind you of your strengths. They encourage your efforts, and they celebrate your growth. This nurtures beliefs that uplift rather than diminish you. Even silence in your environment shapes beliefs. If you grow up or live in a space where no one expresses appreciation, you may form the belief that you are unnoticed or unworthy. If no one acknowledges your efforts, you may believe your work has no value. If no one talks about dreams or possibilities, you may start believing dreams are unrealistic. Emotional absence can be just as shaping as emotional presence. The mind absorbs emotional patterns much faster than intellectual arguments. You can tell yourself 100 times, "I am capable," but if your environment repeatedly sends you emotional messages that contradict that, your beliefs will always tilt toward what you feel, not what you say. This is why protecting your emotional environment is not a luxury, it is essential. Whatever emotions you allow around you eventually become the foundation of the beliefs you carry within you. Everything you consume today is quietly shaping the person you will become tomorrow. And this is a truth most people only realize when change becomes difficult. Growth is not an overnight achievement, it is the slow, subtle result of the inputs you consistently allow into your mind and heart. Each day is like a brick, and whatever you consume becomes the material that forms that brick. Over time, those bricks become the structure of your character, your mindset, and your destiny. Most people look at someone successful, peaceful, disciplined, or wise and think it happened because of a big breakthrough or one huge decision. But in reality, it is the accumulation of small inputs repeated countless times, that creates real transformation. In thee, your habits of consumption shape your future behavior. If you fill your mind with wisdom each day, even in small doses, you develop the ability to handle life with more maturity and clarity. You begin to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. You start recognizing your patterns, correcting your mistakes, and moving with purpose. Your inner guidance becomes more accurate because you are feeding it clarity rather than chaos. On the other hand, if you constantly consume content that distracts your mind, weakens your discipline, or fills you with emotional noise, your future becomes blurry. Decisions become harder. Emotions become heavier. Your ability to stay focused becomes weaker, not because you lack talent, but because the input you've allowed has shaped your internal environment. What you consume consistently also shapes your emotional strength. If you regularly expose yourself to uplifting voices, meaningful ideas, and encouraging messages, you develop emotional resilience. You learn how to stay centered even when life gets difficult. You become more patient, more understanding, more grounded. But if your daily consumption is filled with drama, arguments, unhealthy comparisons, and negativity, your emotional threshold becomes fragile. Minor inconveniences feel big. Small misunderstandings turn into stress. You start losing energy not because life is too heavy, but because your emotional foundation is built on unstable input. Your future confidence is also built through what you consume today. When you learn new things, challenge old beliefs, listen to experiences of people who overcame struggles, or expose yourself to ideas that expand your thinking, you develop self-belief. You begin to trust your abilities. You start feeling capable. You start imagining bigger possibilities. But if you consume content that constantly makes you doubt yourself, voices that criticize, environments that discourage growth, or information that triggers fear, your confidence shrinks with time. You begin to second guess everything, avoid risks, and stay within the boundaries of your comfort zone. Even your future identity is shaped by the inputs you allow now. If you constantly absorb content that promotes superficial values, your identity slowly becomes superficial. If you consume content centered on purpose, gratitude, humility, and discipline, your identity begins to reflect those qualities. You become someone who carries depth, direction, and stability. You begin to understand who you are and what you stand for. People often think change happens only through effort. But effort becomes meaningful only when the input supports it. You cannot expect your future self to be disciplined if today's input is filled with laziness. You cannot expect your future self to be peaceful if today's input is filled with noise. You cannot expect your future self to be wise if today's input is shallow. Your future is being formed right now through the books you read, the voices you listen to, the people you spend time with, and the content you repeatedly absorb. Every input is an investment in the person you are becoming.